Hello, this is Bill Bullard with R-CALF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Well, a couple of weeks ago, it seemed like a pipe dream that we would ever find members of Congress who sufficiently understood the most serious problems impacting our industry and who would be willing to introduce legislation to fix them. But we did. And Senators Chuck Grassley from Iowa and Jon Tester from Montana introduced a bipartisan bill to preserve the integrity of our industry's price discovery market by requiring the largest of packers to purchase at least 50% of their daily cattle input needs from the spot market for each of their plants. Now, this is huge for the nation's cattle producers. But unsurprisingly, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, or NCBA, objected to the bill. The reason this is not a surprise is that the NCBA owes a duty to the largest of packers. They represent them, and they have done so since the mid-90s. So it is fully expected that the NCBA would continue advocating for the packers' interest by opposing any legislation designed to restrict the packers from being able to exert control over the marketplace. Interestingly, the Spot Market Protection Bill is one of the 7 immediate initiatives we asked President Trump to support when we sent our letter to him in mid-March, which was at the outset of the COVID-19 crisis. Another of our recommended actions back in March was our request that the president call on the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate the inexplicable market volatility marked by severely depressed cattle prices and skyrocketing wholesale beef prices. President Trump has now done that. Our request to eliminate the red tape for state-inspected meat plants to allow them to sell beef across state lines, to eliminate the beef supply chain's inability to keep beef in our nation's meat cases, is now under consideration by Congress and perhaps the president. So this is good news. Now, one disappointment is that our request to suspend the decision to allow fresh beef from Brazil into the United States has not yet been realized, as the U.S. Department of Agriculture reports that 57 metric tons of fresh Brazilian beef arrived in the U.S. market last week. But our request that the president require all beef sold in America to be distinguished as to where it was born, raised, and harvested, commonly known as mandatory country of origin labeling, has taken on a new twist this week. R-CALF USA hosted a Facebook Live meeting this week with 2 of our board members, and I was asked why the United States can't put a halt on all imports, at least until this crisis is over. Now, my response was that despite the fact that we have over 385,000 Americans who have signed our petition calling for mandatory country of origin labeling, and that's at www.demandUSAbeef.com, we have a government that won't even support mandatory country of origin labeling, so consumers could choose from which country they want their beef produced. So, how can we expect that same government to take the more aggressive position of actually halting imports? And then the twist. During the president's summary of what our government is doing and will do to help cattle producers meet the serious challenges brought on by this crisis, the president suggested this week that the United States should put an end to cattle imports. So now I must eat crow. It appears the president is beginning to hear our message and is beginning to take it seriously. This week, we sent the president another letter, this one expressing our strong support for his suggestion that live cattle imports be banned. We provided the president with even more justification for banning live cattle imports. We explained that during this crisis, the importers are displacing American ranchers' access to their own market with tens of thousands of imported live cattle each week. We stated this was unconscionable, given that the American ranchers have cattle to sell but no market to sell into. We also explained that importers and packers have long been using live cattle imports to undercut prices for American cattle, resulting in reduced opportunities for independent cattle ranchers to remain profitable. We also explained that Canada and Mexico, the 2 countries that ship live cattle to the U.S., have not treated the United States fairly, as evidenced by their trade practices that persistently create trade surpluses in cattle and beef for them and at the expense of American ranchers. We also pointed out that Canada and Mexico had exploited the dysfunctional World Trade Organization in order to repeal our old coup law that our own judicial system had found to be compliant with our U.S. Constitution. So things are happening very fast in Washington, D.C., so stay tuned for next week's report. Meanwhile, thank you for helping us build support for the American rancher. If you'd like to learn more about what R-CALF USA is doing to help the American rancher and all of rural America, please go to our website at www.r-calfusa.com. With that, have a productive week. Thank you and goodbye.